Equally, on the Palestinian side, how many times do we hear that, well, the only reason we fired the rockets is because of the illegal occupation. It's because we have to defend ourselves against these military operations. Wrong. Rockets fired at civilian targets or indiscriminately fired are illegal. And again, there is absolutely no justification. None whatsoever. Zero. One illegal act does not legalize another act. There are laws that define self-defense. But again, we are so far away from being able to direct the grief, and that's where we need to focus, of course, is on the grief. Because how many times in this conflict did we hear the response to the death of a child, or those who are undisputably innocent, being that, well, they were being used as human shields. They were being used as human shields. And did you discharge your duty of care to protect those human shields? Because in the civilized world, we do not shoot the hostage to get at the hostage taker. Why would we think otherwise? But I never heard an explanation about how the duty of care to civilians who are caught up in conflict, even where they are being held as human shields, was upheld. Accountability is what it's about. Accountability is what it's about. The fog of war is not an excuse. People are killed in war, for sure. But I have had so many political figures who have come to Gaza in the last number of weeks, and I'm very pleased that they have come. And I encourage everybody to come. Please, the friends of Israel, come to Gaza. The friends of Palestine, go to Israel. Sit down with Palestinians, if you're a friend of Israel, and understand what it's like to be a Palestinian living in Gaza or the West Bank. Sit down with them and understand. And go back to your friends then and be good friends to your friends. Equally, if you are a friend of Palestine, go and live for a few days in Sderot or Ashkelon and talk really with an open mind to the people there and understand what it is like to be at the receiving end of Palestinian violence and how that has impacted on their lives. And with that understanding, then be a good friend to Palestinians that you support. Now, we have to realize that there is a major problem here. The absence of the truth and the absence of justice and effective, credible mechanisms for accountability is what is leading to the continued death and destruction for so many on both sides in this conflict. And we have to get back to these two basic, simple approaches. One is to strip away the rhetoric and focus on the facts. So difficult, so difficult. And this is not the first conflict, nor will it be the last, where the truth is a victim, where the truth is a casualty. But we all have responsibility to actually check the facts. We have to challenge what is being said. And on the other side, if we don't have effective, credible mechanisms of accountability for the loss of life, for the destruction of livelihoods, for upholding basic fundamental rule of law, then what have we? What defines us around this world is our actions as measured against the law. That defines us as civilized. If we break the law, then we're not. And there are consequences for that. I mean, I could spend a lot of time talking to you today about the bewildering humanitarian situation in Gaza. It's not about keeping people alive. It's about restoring them to a dignified life. Equally, it's not about ignoring the legitimate security concerns of the State of Israel. It's about taking effective action to actually improve the security situation for the State of Israel. In both cases, we are going in the wrong direction. And, of course, the real tragedy is that the vast majority of people in the Middle East want nothing more than to get on with a decent, dignified life. And it is true, side by side. It is actually true. How many times have I heard in Gaza people wanting to tell me that they're not anti-Israeli, even after this last round of conflict? No. Because they distinguish between what the actions of the Israeli military is and the people that they know. The biggest ambition that people have in Gaza, so many of them, is to return to work, which they had just a couple of years ago in Tel Aviv or elsewhere. That's all they want. And they tell so many of them of the generosity of their former employers who continue to send remittances to them. And when I meet people on the Israeli side, they readily acknowledge that the overwhelming vast majority of the people, the Palestinians, are fundamentally decent human beings. Fundamentally decent. They distinguish them from those who fire rockets or those who advocate terror and so on and so forth. But back to what my Secretary General has said. The circumstances that all of these good and decent people on both sides of this conflict are living in is truly the product of collective political failure. And what we need to do is we need to focus on that. We need to focus on that. One of the most profoundly humbling experiences that I've had recently was when I had one of the European ministers visiting Gaza, and we met a father who had lost his two children. And he recounted to him, I don't call it a story, because that would be to trivialize, but he gave a report, his report of what had happened. He didn't advocate for violence or revenge or vengeance. No. And he was asking for help. He wanted accountability, but he wanted protection for the rest of his family, because the loss of his children, for him, as grief-stricken as he found himself, was second to his concern for the safety of the rest of his family. And he was proudly saying that he had no political affiliations. He was not worried about the onslaught that was coming. Of course, it's not the first time that there has been military operations in Gaza. His house was in an area which had been previously, surrounded by the forces when they come in. They knew the drill. They just keep their head down, stay indoors. Their home was occupied a number of times and so on and so forth. That's life. But this time, it was death as well for his two children. Now, I won't repeat what he alleged, because again, that should go to a forum where he can get accountability for the death of his two children. But I will tell you that his first preoccupation was, if that can happen just now, what else can happen? Because there's been so many red lines crossed. People don't know where it's going to end. And again, they're appealing to us to help them. And as I said to the minister, can we expect anything more civilized from a person in such circumstances, that they turn to you rationally, reasonably, seeking the protections which are the protections of international law, without any verbal abuse, without any aggression, without any threats? This man is not going to become a terrorist. He has decided he's not going to become a terrorist because he knows the futility of violence. But he's not protected. He's not safe.